Yeah, you can hear me, right, David?
Yes, sir. I can.
Is it what is it giving you on your screen?
Okay.
Are you still seeing me?
I want to share my screen here.
No,
Yes,
don't
I
go
can see
yet.
you.
It's still saying starting events.
Okay.
So by your top left hand side,
Okay,
did
sir.
you see a green button or a red button like end call or pick a call?
I can I can see a red button
A
where they
red
say
button. It's a red
the
button
one
you
that
can see.
signifies yes.
Okay, that means it has.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, okay. That means we are live. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we have a few people in the room. So let's start by welcoming them. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Yeah, my name is Tayo Stephen, the chief leading servant of Starry Academy. Yeah, welcome, Sheon. So, with me today is David. Basically, I want to start by welcoming everybody to this webinar. So, we want to see if you are live with us. Please indicate by the chat box. The chat box is by your right hand side. We'll be looking at ICAN exam success webinar, and we're cracking public sector accounting and finance, which is the skill level of ICAN, Institute of Chartered Accountant of Nigeria. So this episode is brought to us by Starry Academy. So let's know where you are joining us from. Please indicate your name and where you are joining us from on the chat box by your right. So just Sean, where are you joining us from? So there are a couple of people that are there, so don't be shy. So let's know your name. Let's have your name and where you are joining us from so that we can acknowledge your presence. All right. So, David, I will hand over to you as you go ahead with
Okay.
your
Thank you so much,
presentation.
sir.
So, as more people join,
Okay.
we'll be welcoming them. So, let's know where you are joining us from. Your
Okay.
name. Oh, okay. I can see Isaac, Albert, Ifeyinwa, Kehinde, Bakare. Thank you all for joining. Your location, please. Where are you joining us from? Um, yeah. Okay, go ahead, David.
Okay. Okay. Good day, students. Welcome to Starry Academy. I hope it's going to be worthwhile with me here. Okay. Can you all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello.
Ifeyinwa is joining us from Victoria Island.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay.
Isaac is joining us from Kwara. How is Kwara today, Isaac?
Okay.
Albert is joining us from Uyo. How is Uyo?
Hmm.
Okay, Ifeyinwa say from Delta State. Okay, Victoria. Sheun, thank you so much for joining us. Bakari, how is Ilorin? So as more and more people join, please indicate your name and where you are joining us from.
Yes.
So, all right, over to you, David.
Okay. Like Mr. Tayo said, this presentation, or this, let me call it this webinar, is just to assist us in it's the fact that we're actually looking at public sector accounting and finance here doesn't mean that we can actually apply what we are going to be doing today to other courses during the course of this particular examination. Even those of us that will be sitting for some other exams like ACCA and some other professional exams, it could be actually relevant to you also. So I don't want us to um, narrow this down to only uh, PSAP, specifically PSAP, public sector accounting and finance. And we don't have much time to waste. Let's dive into what we have for us today. So um, alongside Mr. Tayo, we're looking at these three aspects, looking at since at the end of this particular webinar, you should be able to understand and appreciate the effective management, reviewing, understanding, analyzing question requirements carefully. I think we're looking at the hierarchy rule there, then also right. So let's move to understanding the question first of all. And with me here on the slide, I hope you can see the slide here. Uh, so we have various verbs, verbs that use particular question. You analyze, discuss, apply,
Um, sorry, David.
we
I don't
actually
know whether it's
discover.
me. Sorry, David. I'm not hearing you clearly. If you're hearing me clearly, I think I'm not hearing you clearly.
Oh,
Maybe you speak to your mic very well. Okay, you can please continue.
I can actually hear you. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, you appear to be vibrating a little,
Yeah,
such that yeah, I can hear your voice, but not what you are saying. The audio is breaking. Yes, that's what John is saying. I can't. Okay. Um, okay. Let's wait for him to join again. Um, he just left now. Yeah, I guess it is his network that is having challenge. So let's just wait for him. Okay. All right.
okay.
Welcome back.
I lost my connection there, so I had to
Yes.
reconnect.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you lost it, you can always
Okay.
reconnect. So
Yes, sir.
yeah, you can always refresh your refresh button,
Okay.
and then it will bring you back on. So we can hear you
Okay.
very clearly now. So you can go on with your presentation.
Okay, sir. Okay. So, like I was saying earlier, I said we have various exam. Let me call it examiner verbs. We have years. I've always saying and this also not only
Your
that,
network is still
that important
cracking.
exam.
You are still cracking. Your network appears to be bad. So something is wrong
Like
with
this
your
now.
network. Okay,
Okay.
so while
Is
I'm
it fair,
waiting
right?
for you to fix your network, yeah, your network is bad.
Is it fair now?
So maybe you want to check it or change the network to something else. So while we're waiting, I want to use this opportunity to welcome those that are just joining us. So please indicate your name and where you are joining us from in the comment section by your right hand side if you are using the computer. But if you are joining us from your mobile phone, down beyond below this video, you can put your comment there so that we can acknowledge your presence, where your name and where you are joining us from. Okay, so David is our presenter. Um, yeah, so it's okay. Welcome back, David.
Yes. Keeps reconnecting and connecting. Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah, yeah. You just go ahead so that I can give you feedback if your network is working properly now.
Okay. Okay. So, first of all, let's look at um, uh,
Oh no, your network is cracking. Your voice is cracking. So yeah, Andrew, welcome. You are joining us from Lagos. Thank you for that. Um, David, you are cracking, which means your network is not very strong. Andrew, welcome from Lagos. Blessing Ngozi Nwosu. Good morning. Okay, good morning, Mrs. Nwosu Blessing from Port Harcourt. How is Port Harcourt today? Welcome. Welcome, John from Lagos. Okay. So, yeah, Abdul Amin from Offa. How is Offa this morning? You are welcome. Yeah, Martin, how is Lagos? Which part of Lagos are you joining us from? Welcome, Martins. All right. So what we are looking at today is how to tackle PSAF questions. Of course, we realize that many students fail the exam not necessarily because they don't know what they are doing. No, not necessarily. Yeah, Martin Sulere, thanks. So, but they failed the exam because of poor um, understanding of what to do inside the exam hall. So we are going to look at that. Some don't have proper understanding of what we call examiner, the verbs used by examiner. So we bring in the experts today to look at that. So we've been able to um, speak with examiners. They have given us cue directions on areas that they see students struggling. So we have assembled all the verbs that are available. For instance, describe, for instance, analyze, for instance, define, illustrate. We have assembled all of that. Um, an expert in PSAF, one of our core key um, um, lecturers at Starry Academy. So, Shakiru, welcome. Hi, Sapele. All right, David, you are back. So,
Yes, sir. I
great.
had to switch networks.
I think
The
this one is much
situation of the
better now. Yeah, I think I should just clap for you. This is brighter, and I'm happy about that. All right, so you can go ahead with your presentation. So if you are
okay,
still joining us and
okay,
we have
sir.
not acknowledged your presence, please indicate your name in the chat box and tell us where you are joining us from, and then we'll acknowledge your presence. Okay, so go ahead, David. So you might need to
Okay, so
start
like
from
I was
the
saying
beginning.
earlier,
No, you might just need to start
oh,
afresh
oh,
because your network was cracking all
okay,
right.
sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, okay. Am I audible enough now?
Very well, very well. This is far better.
Okay, 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 sir. So I was talking about understanding the question, and before I even move to understanding the question, why we are setting up this is just to ensure that we are able to understand and appreciate effective time management at the end of this webinar. So we look at reviewing, understanding, and analyzing question requirements carefully, structuring answers in order to earn more marks. So before my network went off the other time, I was trying to explain some of the examiner's verbs that we normally come across in the exam. In fact, most of us would have come across this due to the course of our maybe academics, professional career, and all of that. And we tend to misunderstand these verbs. Are we together?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I'll be speaking on behalf of others. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Okay, sir. Okay. So, and most times we tend to misunderstand these verbs, especially in the example. So that is the major reason why the first aspect of this particular webinar is just to give us, have we've been able to come through with some typical exam questions. Do you get for each of these verbs, just for it to aid more understanding to us. So let's move quickly to some of these verbs here. So the following point will help you understand the questions effectively. So we have analyze here, analyze here. And when we talk about analyzing. So when you are in the exam and the examiner comes, okay, probably after various, in the exam or you are professionals now, and you don't expect examiners to go straight to the question. That's what I keep telling my students, that in the exam or the examiner will not go straight to question. The examiner will first give you a lot of preamble, a lot of, I call it noise. Do you get what matters to you is to go to the exam requirement? I'm very sure my co-presenter here, Mr. Tayo, is going to do justice to that when we go to the next area that we are going to be examining after this. Now, talking about the exam requirements when it comes to analyzing, it entails breaking the question into separate parts just to ensure you discuss, interpret each part, and lastly, relate the exam question to the scenario provided. You don't have to make it disjointed. What they've told you to do in the question is to analyze. So if you analyze it, you consider every aspect. Do you get break it into parts? Make the examiner understand that oh, you know what you are doing. You analyzing it means that you go into details, breaking the question into separate parts, just to ensure that you discuss and you interpret each part, and lastly relate the exam question to the scenario provided. So are we making any sense at all? And I have a particular exam question here. Let's go through it together. Let's go through it together. It says the consolidated revenue fund could be defined as all revenues or other monies raised or received by the federation, not being revenues. Or can you see that all of this now is like a preamble with like maybe noise? Do you get? And reading through all of this could actually reading through all of this before you go into the requirement could actually take your time. We'll deal with this when we look at, like I said earlier, that Mr. Tayo will be looking at it from the angle of time management when we get there. So if I were you here, I'll just go straight to the requirements. No need to, because I know when I read the requirements, it will guide me when I'm reading through the preamble, let me call it the noise, like I do say in quote. So it says analyze the sources of federal government revenue that is payable to the consolidated revenue fund. Analyze the sources of federal government revenue that is payable to the consolidated revenue fund. Yeah, you know there are various, so they had various heads, and they've been classified under various heads. You know the heads that actually goes to the consolidated revenue fund, right? So you should be able to analyze each of these. Don't just go there and list. Do you get? Don't just say, oh, head one, so head two, so. Do you get? What they want you to do here is you analyzing it means that under each head, you break it down and make them understand that, okay, under this head, these are the various types of examples of, you can even give examples when an examiner tells you to analyze. Do you get? So these are all what, do you see that I didn't even have to go back into the question, reading it, because I've already seen the requirement, and it doesn't warrant me to start going back to the question. It's kind of separate from the question. The requirement, this particular question here, the earlier preamble and all of that, was just to give you an intro into what the examiner wants you to talk about. Do you get? So quickly, let's dive into the next one here. I'm trying to be, there's a limiting factor here, and I'm trying to be conscious of that, so which is time. But let's go into apply. That's another keyword there, and that thing that the examiner used to make use of in the example. It's a apply. This actually entails using principle, standards in public sector accounting and finance just to deal with a particular requirement in a given case scenario. The examiner wouldn't have told you to apply if he does not know that there's a basis for the application of that particular requirement. Do you get? So if the examiner told you to apply, then you should know that there is something that will form the basis of the application of what you want to do. Do you get? So the case is given to you, it's thrown open to you. Now, what is next for you is to consider, okay, where am I picking the basis from? Of course, trust me, you must have done justice to the syllabus. So immediately you go through the question, your brain immediately starts to calculate that, okay, where is this question coming from? So you can be able to use the concept in that syllabus to apply. Do you get? So you are using application of a particular principle or a standard. Like this question here now is thrown from IPSAS 13. I think it's on leases, isn't it? On January 1st, 2014, the company acquired machinery on lease, which had a fair value of 500,000 and nil residual value at the end of its economic life of 5 years. Lease payments of, we are not treating any question here. As a matter of fact, this is just a guide. Do you get? I'm just using this. It wouldn't have made sense if I just come here and start talking without throwing you questions. Do you get? Showing exam type questions. Do you get? Just to make you understand it much more better. Do you get? So on 1st January 2014, the company acquired machinery on lease, which had a fair value of 500,000 and nil residual value at the end of its economic life of 5 years. The lease payment of 139,778 naira was first made on 1st January 2014. The lease payment is to be made on the first day of the financial year. The implicit interest rate was put at 8%. Now the requirement is, how should the newly leased machine be treated in the financial statement? Now, this does not explicitly tell you to apply something, but you get, it has an intrinsic kind of requirements, let me use that word, just for you to apply, you know what you are applying here. You should use the principle of ipsas 13, talking about leases. Do you get? So that is what you should be using here. So immediately you hear apply. In this question, they didn't tell you to apply. Do you get? But this question I chose to use, they didn't tell you to apply. So doesn't mean that you should not apply. What you are just going to do there is go back to the principle of or the what was told in I sorry IPSAS 13, that is leases, just to treat this question. Simple. Are we together? So let's move into the next. I don't know if I'm audible enough. I don't know. We're
Yes, you
talking
are
about
audible enough.
assessing.
You are audible
Okay,
enough.
okay,
All right, just before we go ahead,
okay.
Martin is asking, can the video of this be released to us after the webinar? The answer is yes, it will be available. Then Blessing, Wosu says she's doing a case study. Yeah, we'll get to case study.
Okay,
Just keep alert.
exactly.
We will notify you. The case study lecturer will come on board and also put us through what we need to do. All right, back to you,
Oh,
David.
okay, okay. Thank you, sir. Now we are moving to assess. Assess. Now, when we look at assess, please, I don't want us to mix all of these concepts together. They are, in as much as there can be similarities between them, they are disjoint also. So if you take this require, over times I've heard students saying, "Oh, they read for the exam, they prepared so hard for the exam, and they did it right in the exam, but when the results came out, it was the opposite." Do you get? The thing is, these are little things that could actually guarantee you. I call it, they are just edge that could actually guarantee you that success. Do you get? So pay cognizance attention to each of these concepts. Now, assess. Exam. Looking at the exam requirement, it entails determining the strength, weakness, importance, significance to the given question. Now, assess in the exam hall. Now, let me take, for example, in the exam hall, the examiner just tells you to like assess. Okay, they wouldn't just come and tell you something. They'll give you a preamble, like the one we did earlier on. So they give you a preamble and tell you, oh, this is so, and they'll be like, okay, assess the effect of this on that. Saying assess is not a specific kind of requirement. Now, once you hear assess, the next thing that should be in your mind is, oh, give a broad definition of that concept. Do you get? Make them understand the weaknesses, the strength, the importance, the significance. If you trust me, if you can write on the strengths, you define that concept, the weaknesses, the importance, or talk about the significance, you have done justice to that question. And you don't need to start panicking or something. Do you get? Are we together? Now, let's look at an exam question here. In an effort to promote accountability and transparency in governance, the administration has adopted and implemented the International Public Sector Accounting Standard (IPSAS) from January 2014.
Hello, David. What happened? Hello, David. I'm not sure we can hear you anymore. Are you still there? You might exit and join again. Hello, anyone, everyone. Are you hearing me? If you are in the chat box, can you please let's know whether I'm the one that is having the issue or is David? Can you hear us? Please put it in the chat box there if you can hear me. Okay. If you can hear me, please put it in the chat box. Okay, I think David has exited. He's going to join again. We can't see the presenter. Okay. Thank you, Sean. So he's going to join again. All right. Yes, I can. Thank you, Odua. So the presenter is coming back again. You have to bear with us. Um, okay, John, thank you very much. So he's going to come back now. Obviously, technology and the internet is not strong everywhere. We are not all in the same location. Okay, he's back. Let's see how that goes. Okay, all right. He's trying to join us again. So the same thing for any of our attendee. If your internet is having issue, just refresh, and then you'll be able to join. Okay, so let's wait for our presenter. It's almost back. Thank you for that feedback, Isaac. Okay, yeah, David, um, we cannot see you, we cannot hear you yet. All right, thank you, Shakiru. Thanks so much for your feedback. So, David, we are waiting for you. This okay. All right, so let's be patient. Okay, while we're waiting for him, if you have just joined us, please put your name in the chat box and your where you are joining us from, so that we can acknowledge your presence. So, if you haven't done that earlier, please go ahead. So, if you are just joining us, how to pass ICAN public sector accounting exams. Basically, we are teaching purely exam techniques here. Yeah, when I was doing this exam, I was an average student. I was an average student. But some of the technique that we are using here, we have put together is as a result of the one myself and a lot of people used in passing the exam. So it has nothing to do with whether you have with the question itself in terms of the syllabus. Here we are just trying to explain the various technique you can use. I remember that time, the big four, the audit firm. We have they used to call them the big three, I think, before they became the big four that time. So, and they used to recruit first class graduates. If you are a first class graduate from, yeah, thank you, Odua, from Benin. I hope Benin City is fine today. All right, if you are a first class graduate from any of the university, you are a good candidate to be recruited by the big four, right? I mean the audit firm, PwC, Akitola Winem, Deloitte, and so on and so forth, right? So, but when we go for the exam that time, many of the people in the big four don't necessarily remember, don't necessarily pass the exam, and then that's what our lecturer was telling us, that that's the feedback he got from his student. So because I welcome back, David. Welcome back, David. All right.
Sorry, I lost the question.
Yeah, I hope your internet is fine now. All right. So,
Yes, sir.
uh,
It was
okay.
just
So I will hand over the mic to you, but let me finish the story I was telling the student before
okay,
you
sir.
talk. So the lecturer then told us that, look, the brilliant student don't necessarily pass ICANN exam, and then we were curious. We said, why? Why won't the brilliant student pass? He said, so the brilliant student go into the exam, and what the examiner is looking for is not just your brilliance. They are looking for your timing. They are looking for how you manage your time, how you present your paper, and all of that. Then they went on to teach various exam techniques and all the rest. So all of those things are what we have put together today. Albert said, please, I don't always understand the term control paper. Well, that's outside the scope of our webinar today. But let me just throw something in. It's a myth. They used to say I can't have control paper. That means if you are doing skill level, for instance, and they will make audit so difficult so that a lot of people will fail. So that's what they mean by control paper. But usually it's a myth. We don't believe that exists, although it appears
Yeah.
to. So you say this is a control paper because they are bringing question outside the syllabus. Not necessarily so. I will give more information around that as we go along. So, David, Back to you. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, so I
So
stopped at
our time is going. I think
assess.
you have
Okay,
barely 20, 10, is it 15 minutes more? So you need to be fast.
okay,
All
okay,
right.
okay,
Go ahead, please.
okay. So let's move to calculate. Now, talking about calculate, this actually entails computing using mathematical process of determining the value of an outcome. This is one area that most of us wants to hear. In the exam, or you already know what it means when the examiner tells you to calculate. So I don't think there's much of explanation to do here. So due to my um, time limiting factor here, so I wouldn't be able to go through the question, but you can actually see it for yourself on the slide. We have been told to calculate the contributory pension for the month she actually retired. This question is drawn from pensions and gratuity. So please take cognizance of that. Let's move to our next area here. Now, comment. I don't know, most times you see people telling you, the examiner telling you, comment on this particular aspect. Before they can actually tell you to comment, they would have given you a scenario. It will come like maybe as a case or probably as, like I do say, a preamble to the requirement. So they'll just tell you comment. And when you hear comment, it entails you including an explanation, illustration, or criticism in your answer. Do you get? Now, this reminds me of something I intend saying today. When the examiner tells you to comment, and of course, I have told you here that you can actually give an explanation, illustration, or raise a criticism in your answer. Now, when you are trying to criticize in a question, probably they've told you, oh, the person, at times they can test some ethical area, and they'll tell you, okay, comment on what this person did. Is it ethical enough or something? You can encounter ethical questions or questions from ethics in any of your papers. So don't say ICAN did not teach you. You can encounter it because you know that as a requirement for you to be a chartered accountant, you have to pass the ethical area of this particular institute. So you can encounter ethics. I just had to chip that in. You can encounter ethics. So prepare for it. At this level, you should have done justice to the principles I
Okay, I'm not sure we are hearing you again. The internet has misbehaved again. So, people, you need to bear with us. So, if you are just joining us, please go ahead and give us your name and where you are joining us from. So, unfortunately, the internet is acting up from where David is. He's going to try to join again as we continue. All right. So while we're waiting for him to come on board, like I was saying before, for those who the story I was talking about, um, one other thing I would like to chip in before David comes in, which I don't want to leave out, is you must attempt all questions, right? So sometimes you are giving 4, 6 papers. I think in the part 2, I will be sharing those questions before the end of this webinar. You are giving 4, 6 questions, you are asked to choose 4, right? So make sure that you attempt at least the 4 they ask you to attempt. Don't do beyond that. Sometimes you know 5 questions, right? Sometimes you even know the 6. Some students will go ahead and answer all the 6, right? They are so brilliant. And yet, when the examiner is to mark, they will mark everything, right? And they will pick the best 2 and cancel it out. The best 2 that you have, they'll cancel it out. Since it means, therefore, that you were supposed to choose 4, and right, since you didn't choose 4, you did 6 questions. That means you are asking the examiner to choose for you. So the rule is that the examiner will choose the one that you have the highest mark, and they will cross it out. So don't do more than 4 if you are the question, if the session say answer any 4. So I'm chipping that in while we're waiting for David to come back because of his internet, right? But that's not all. Then Sometimes you are asked to do four. I mean, you are requested to do four out of six. But when you are doing this, when you are in the exam hall, you can only remember only three. So because it's only three you remember, right? You should go ahead and attempt the fourth one. Why should you attempt the fourth one? Why? Even though you don't know anything about it. Let's assume that it's question six you don't know. You don't even know, have a clue about it. Just write there 6A and then write the requirement of the question um, at the beginning and leave it like that. That means you have attempted it. Why is this relevant? One of our okay, Albert say, can we reschedule so that David can have enough time? Well, let's see how it goes because at least we have about an hour to go. So he was to present, I'm to present. So I'm just coming in now so that we'll still have the time so that my own presentation time will be reduced, right? So I'll go on to say that by the time you do that attempt, please take note of what I want to tell you. This was given to me many years ago by one of our lecturer when I was still doing this ICAN exam. So remember, I qualified in 1997. Yeah, I qualified in 1997. And I follow these tips and we develop them and we keep talking to examiners to understand what the requirements of the exams are, right? So that we can package how you should answer them in the exam for you. Now, there was this particular question, right? If you look at the Pathfinder, sometimes you will see some error in the Pathfinder. If you have been using Pathfinder, you would have come across this. So some things came up. You remember that it's not only one person that will mark your paper. So for your PSAF, for instance, um, one lecturer, I mean, one marker marks only one question, which means if I am an examiner, I'm a marker, I'm only allowed to mark only one question, which means I will mark only number one. So I will mark only number one for all the scripts, not necessarily all the script. We might be 10 that is marking only number one, but I cannot mark number one and number two. I don't know if you get that. So no one marker can make you pass or fail. So I want us to understand when they say I can't fail me, it's not just one person that will pick your script and mark everything, right? That is the way they used to do it, right? So if that has not changed, it means that I will mark only number four. Another person will mark number five. Another person will mark number six, right? So if that has not changed. Now, if it has changed, then fine. It means that one person will mark one script. But the point I want to bring up is that there was this scenario where one person was marking. After he finished his script, right, he now decided to join others. So, but before he joined others, he picked the marking guide and he decided to rework the solution. When he reworked the solution, he found out that the answer he was getting is different from the answer in the marking guide, right? This is many, many years ago. This was a secret that this lecturer was telling us in the lecture hall. So he said he found out that the solution was not rhyming. So they have to call a meeting and check the whole the solution again. And they found out that the question had some technical error, which means you can't get the right solution that the examiner intended, right? So they now say, but they have marked about 2,000 scripts already. And remember, ICAN must release their results at a particular time. So what are they going to do? So all these people, these 2,000 scripts they have marked, none of them obviously will get the right answer. So what are they going to do? They now say, okay, everybody who attempted that question, give them full mark. Everybody who attempted that question, give them full mark. Which means if the 2,000 script they have marked, all the people who attempted that question were given full mark. Then the other one they have not marked, they won't bother marking it, right? They will just keep giving them all the full mark. Imagine if you didn't attempt that question at all. That means you have zero. So that's the part I want to bring up here. So we're still waiting for David. Let me see whether our technical team can contact him to know what the issue is. So our technical team, I believe they are trying to contact him to know what the issue is. All right. So while we are waiting for him, I want to go ahead and do a little of my own presentation. All right. So I'll be sharing my screen because, like I told us, this is divided into two places. So first and foremost, while we're waiting for David, because of time, I'm going to share my screen and explain some key points that we should take cognizance of. PSAF is page 87. So I'm going to share with us PSAF. Okay, that's a moment while we're waiting for the lecturer. Okay, just one moment, please. I'm going to share my own screen. So it's coming back to explain the verbs that we're looking at. So thank you very much, Abiodun. You are surprised at what I just told you. So these are some of the issues. So brilliant students don't necessarily pass the exam, not because they are not brilliant, but the exam techniques. So let me quickly share my screen so that we can go in. All right, while we're waiting for David. All right. Okay. Yeah, I want to believe that you can see my screen. So if you can see my screen, please type there, yes, I can see your screen. If you can see my screen, please type there, yes, I can see your screen. I'm waiting for your comment. Just one moment, please. Thank you very much for those of you who can see my screen. So I'm back. We're still waiting for David. All right, thank you, Oluwakemi. Yeah, so let me still share my screen so that we can go and see what I wanted us to see. All right, so this is the ICAN Pathfinder. I'm going to just one moment. Let me quickly get to where, yes, PSAF. So if you see, look at the screen very well, you see here the issue of Chartered Accountant of Nigeria, skill level examination, May 2021. Public sector accounting and finance. Time allowed. Let's take note of this. Time allowed is 3 hours, 3 1/4 hour. What does that really mean? It means 3 hours, 15 minutes. 15 minutes is an extra time that is added for reading time. Now, the instruction said you are required to answer 4 out of 6 questions in this paper, right? You are required to answer 4 out of 6. Take note of that. Then section A says compulsory question, 40 mark. So there are 6 questions in all. So let's go ahead and see them. So that's question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. Here is question 4. You can see it here. This is question 4. Then I go to question 5 and question 6. That is all. But remember, let's go back to the requirements. The questions are 6 in numbers, but it say question 1 is compulsory. So it therefore means that you must answer question 1. That's what it means. So in the exam, must you start with question 1? The answer is no. You don't have to start with question 1. So in the exam, and when you see the exam question like this, the question 1 is usually case study, plenty of questions, and prepare. Yeah, you can see the requirements here. Like I said, we are not answering this question because we have already answered this question in our video lectures, right? We have already answered this question fully in our video lectures. So if you don't have the video lecture, request for it. And I think for the May 2021, if it is not yet out, then it should be out in the next few days. And if you don't have the previous diet, then you can always request for them. All right. So this is question one. You don't always have to start with question one, like I said earlier, right? So that is one thing you want to take note of. Then the second thing you want to take note of, remember it's a 3 hours question. 3 hours question. 15 minutes is for reading. During the reading time, you are not expected to write down anything. So when you enter the exam hall, what should you do? Many students make the mistake by start reading the questions. No, you go to the requirement. Now, since question one is compulsory, right? You don't waste your time in question one. You go straight to question two because whether you like it or not, you have to attempt question one. So you go and look at question two to see whether it is a question you will want to answer. Now, as you look at the screen, you will see that this is question two here. Let me bolden it more so that you see that this is question two here. So instead of reading this body of the question, you don't read that. You go straight to the requirement. Remember that question two has some parts. Question 2A. So you go to the requirement. This is what you will read. The requirement said explain the terms, debt sustainability analysis, identifying its 3 objective and 5 benefits, 10 mark. Now that takes me to the next thing. Now this question said 10 mark. Remember that you have 3 hours. So I'm bringing out my calculator here. 3 hours times 60 minutes gives us how many? 180 minutes. So your 3 hours means you have 180 minutes to do the exam. So if we divide that 180 minutes by 100, it means that you have 1.8 minutes for every 1 mark. So therefore, this question that is 10 mark means that you should not spend more than 18 minutes on it. Because you divide 1.8 by 10, it will give us 18 minutes. So you time yourself so that if you are interested in answering this question, right, you don't spend more than 18 minutes on it. Anything you write after you have spent 18 minutes on this, diminishing return will start coming in. Everything you have written in the first 18 minutes is the best you can write. So you leave it and move to the question B. But like I was saying earlier on, we don't even know whether you want to answer question 2 or not. So you read the requirements. If this sounds like something you want to answer, you quickly answer it. You quickly note it down as part of what you want to do. So this other requirement say explain to the permanent secretary. This is a small case study here, right? You don't want to waste your time reading it. You just go to this place and say, what did they say you should explain? 3 differences between accrual accounting and cash accounting. 3 justification for adopting IPSAPs, accrual accounting in public sector, and so on and so forth. So this is also a 10-mark question. Remember that each of these are broken down. All of these, you must not spend more than 18 minutes. Remember that. So you go read question 3. You read the requirement. If it is something you want to answer, then you answer, you note it down. You go to you go to question 4 also. You read the requirement. You go to question 5. Make sure you read just the requirements alone. So once you have identified the question that you want to answer, right, then you can now go ahead and start answering them. So let me see if, is David back? Is David back? I'm not sure David is back. So just a moment. Let me just check whether David is back. But even if he's back, I'll still need to conclude what I'm doing now. All right. So let me stop sharing. I'll come back to this. And okay, David is not yet back. So okay, he's joining the room again. So why is joining the room? let me use that opportunity to continue my own presentation, right? Okay. Um, all right. I think it's back. Yeah. You're welcome back, David. So just a
Okay, sir.
moment. Let me wrap up with what I was doing while you were away. So, like I said, well, necessity is the mother of invention. So when you find yourself in the exam hall and you find out that there are crises like we are facing now, right? You want to adapt. Like somebody said, we should
Okay.
postpone it. No, we are two presenter. He is supposed to finish before I continue, but I'm coming in between. So like I've said earlier, there are 6 questions you are required to answer for. Number one is compulsory. Then, so once you read the requirement, you first read the requirements of the question. Here it says explain 5 strategies to enhance cash management control and 5 factors militating against effective cash management. 10 mark. So once you know that you are comfortable, you have identified all the one you want to do, then you now go back. We now go to what you call easy mark. You now go to what we call easy mark. Now, I'll share another part of my screen, which I'm not. I want to be sure you are seeing. You go to what we call easy mark. Okay, let me see if you are seeing what I have here. Let me see whether you are seeing what I have here. Okay. So David, are you seeing my screen? You need to please
Yes,
give
I
me that.
can. I can.
All right. So did you you need to let me know what you are seeing. Um,
Okay.
is it the question or you can see the screen that I'm sharing now? Okay, let me
Okay, I can see the question, the one you were treating
okay,
earlier
the
on.
question we are still seeing. Okay, so let me do
Yeah.
something good. Let me share another part of my screen. Let me rather share the entire screen.
Okay.
That makes it easier for me. Okay, all right. Okay, now I want to assume that this is our answer sheet. Like I said earlier on, you don't have to answer the first question. So you can see page 1 here, and maybe I want to answer question 3. So you come to your answer sheet and put question 3A. Now let me go back to the the let me go back to okay. Now let me go back to the question. Now, no, not this one. Where is the question here? Okay. Okay, let me assume that I'm doing question 3, right? So the first thing you want to do is to
Okay.
label here as question 3. So 3A. Now, watch carefully what I'm doing. You label your next page also as question 3A continue, right? Remember that usually there's a small hole here where you can that is perforated. I don't know how the exam scripts are now. Usually there's a perforation by the edge where you can tie your question paper together. So you put question 3A continue. You now go to the next one and put question B. So mark what I did. I'm starting each sub on 2 pages. Why is that? Maybe I'm not doing 2A first and foremost. When I start doing 2A and I get to 2A, I can continue by the next page. Now, the third page will be 2B. Let's assume that where the answer I'm writing here in 2A, continue, and now get to the end here, and I still have more to write. So if I have more to write, I can always call for additional papers so that I don't alter what I have in 2B. That means, therefore, that I can start 2B before I even start 2A, if that is what I have here. I don't know, David, you need to give me the feedback. Is what I'm saying making sense?
The
Okay.
feedback, it's
Yeah.
it's actually making sense. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much. So
Yes,
what
sir.
I'm trying to say here is that you don't have to start with the first question. So I'm doing 2A continue here. Then This is 2B. You must label every sheet. This is 2B continue. Then the third one will be 2C, 2C continue. Then I move on to 3D, 3D continue. So I don't have to, the moment I finish question 3, you see, I don't have to start question 4. If it is question 5 that is easier, I go and start question 5. You can see it here that I have 3D, then the next page here is 5A. So I don't have to start them chronologically, but I have to label them proper appendix. I have to label them properly. So I have 5A here, 5A continue, 5B, 5B continue, 5C, 5C continue, 5D. So maybe it's 5D that is easiest for me. I can quickly come and start 5D. So 5D continue. Now I want to do something here. Let me say 6A. Never do this mistake where you start 6A here and you now come to the middle of the sheet and say 6B. Never do that mistake. Many students do those mistakes. Now you come here and say 5 advantages, right? Maybe the question say you should give 5 advantages of cash system. You now start here, you give the first one, you give the second one, you give the third one. Now remember that you have started 6B first. Now you now come back, you want to start 6A. You now start writing. You now get to this point. You now find out that you don't have additional space. What do most students do? They cancel this. Remember, you spend time to write this. They cancel this and go to the next one. And they now come here and say 6A, right? Continue. This is how students fail the exam. They continue writing. Then they now come here and rewrite the 6B that they have cancelled earlier on. You see that by that you have wasted time, right? So you want to avoid that. So let me go back to how I numbered these pages so that each sub must take, if you like, 2 pages. Don't economize the papers for the examiner. Ask for as many extra paper as you can ask for. Don't economize it for them. So like I said earlier on, I'm starting with 3A. I go to 3A continue. I go to 3B. And maybe it's 3B I really know very well. I can now start 3B here. And then I finish 3B and there's nothing to do here, right? I can just cross this place, right? So that the examiner knows that I'm not using this place. Or if I don't cross this place, I simply now can change this place and now use it. But you don't want to economize any paper, anything for your examiner, like I said earlier on, because you have paid for the answer scripts. You have paid for them. All right. So I would like to stop here. If you have your question, throw them into the answer sheets, right? I mean, the comment box there. I would like to stop here and allow David to take over. So David, back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. What happened the other time? I was actually still going through the various verbs, examiner verbs. I didn't know I was already logged out of class.
Okay, so I'll be giving you intermittent signal so, once you are out. I'll be giving you signal once you are out. All right, so you can go back. So if you are not, this person said, but I can't view video of this webinar session. Check your network, Emeka. Emeka, reconnect through the link that you joined, or just refresh your browser and then you'll be good. All right, please give us emotion, give us feedback there. Are you feeling us? Are you here? Let's know whether we're on the same page. So tell us your feedback. So let me wait for that based on what we have done so far. So David, you can share your screen and while we're waiting. Yes.
Okay. So
those of us who I was able to hear us. Okay, go ahead. Just a moment.
Okay, so while
okay, John, thanks so much. Okay, go ahead.
So while I was having the issue with network, I think I had already got into effective time management. So I can't really remember where I stopped there. Maybe I should just run it through again.
You need to go back to the verb where you did assess and then from there continue to effective management. So I've already done a little of effective management. So but just go back to the verb. Abiodun, thank you very much. I'm very I'm glad that you gave that feedback. Thank you. That means you find value. So go back to assess, and then let's use the
Okay.
next 10 minutes to quickly go through what you have done from access. That's why we
Okay.
lost you. So,
So,
all right.
so okay. From here, I said something about assessing if the examiner requires you to assess a particular question. It entails determining the strengths, weaknesses, importance, significance to the given question. It's more of when an examiner tells you to assess something, it's more like a blank check to me because of he's not being direct, like he's not narrowing that requirement. He wants, and at the same time, in as much as you are trying to assess, you have to ensure that you talk about the strengths of that particular concept, the weaknesses, probably the importance, the significance, and all of that. In this particular question, which I will not be able to talk about, you see that we actually spoke about IPSAS, the introduction of IPSAS in public sector accounting, and how it came into play in 2014. Now, the question requirement be for you to assess the impact that IPSAS has had over the years on financial
David, we have
reporting in
lost
the
you
public
again.
sector. Are we together? So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah. Yes, thank you, Oduwa. You say you're making me know my little mistake.
Okay.
This is an eye opener. Thank you, Oduwa, for that feedback. So,
Oh,
David,
okay.
you can go on.
So, and when we look at calculate, I'm quite sure that all of us are familiar with calculation. When we talk about calculation, the examiner is very direct. He must have given you definitive figures, he must have given information if it requires for you to actually do such mathematical process. So, just to determine the value of an outcome. Time will not actually allow me go through this exam question that I've actually given us here, but it actually tells us to calculate contributory pension for the month that this particular um, person retired, and it was taken from the pensions and gratuity aspect of the syllabus. Now let's talk about comments. Comment. When you are required to comment on a particular um, case or probably a scenario. Now, it entails including an explanation, illustration, or criticism in your answer. You know, when you are told to comment, it is like, oh, it's wanting you to like talk about, explain what this particular concept is talking about, or what has happened in the case. Explain to the best of your understanding. Give illustration. Then, if it also requires for you to criticize, and when it comes to this area of criticism, though we are still going to look at criticizing like as a verb also. Now, there's a particular area that I would actually wish to 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 actually talk about here. We are all professionals. Raise the criticism in your question, in the requirement. Please always do it in a professional way. There's something called professional skepticism. Now, when you are looking at professional skepticism, it means you are not the way you see it, this particular thing, that's not the way you are putting it down. You're actually exercising your own professional judgment here. Are we together? Now, professional skepticism
Yeah.
being used when you are raising a criticism means that even in the scenario, like probably, and at this stage, you should expect in any of your exams, you can actually be faced with an ethical question. Maybe you should assess the IFA code of ethical code of conduct and all of that. So it should not be new to you. Don't say you were not taught. You can, as do you know that as a part of your requirement to be a chartered accountant, you have to pass the ethical aspect of it. So you should be ready to answer any question on ethics at this level. So you can be told to assess or to comment on the ethical.
Okay. So, David, your this thing is hanging again. So
considerations in a particular requirement. Are we together?
no, your
Okay.
this thing
Am I
was
still
hanging.
on?
Yeah, you were on, but you were hanging.
Oh,
So you can go on. Yeah, before you go ahead, Cynthia, you say my network is bad. Oh, I'm not getting anything. Cynthia, you can refresh. It could be your network actually, but usually you can get a replay once we are done. You can go through this thing on your own time. So David, over to you. I think we have 10 minutes more to
okay.
go. Okay.
Okay, sir. So I was talking about being professional where you criticize. And in a situation using professional skepticism, in a situation where you are told to raise a particular criticism as a requirement, you probably in the question you notice that oh, there was a case of window dressing or creative accounting and all of that, or probably a particular ethical code was breached. You don't have to say it that okay, the person has done this. You have to be professional while at it. You can tell them, you can use connecting words like it appears. Are we together? Or it
Yeah.
might appear like, oh, this particular code of ethics has been breached. Or you can use words like it looks like. You don't have to say be absolute about it. That is what professional skepticism entails. So when you are criticizing, you have to be wary of that. You can use words like it may seem as though. Are we together? So that's
Yeah.
just that. Now let's move to compare. Now, looking at comparing, it entails explaining similarities and differences. I think most people are quite clear with that. Of course, there will be two concepts that are looking like they are the same. So you have to differentiate them or raise the similarities between them. Look at this now. State the distinctions between external debt and internal debt. Now let's move on. Conclusion. Now, when we look at conclusion is usually used when you are faced with a case study question. It's just like when you are, it means you are bringing all what you have been doing to an end. And you cannot bring it to an end without making necessary recommendations. Of course, recommendation and conclusion goes hand in hand. So you have
Yeah.
to make necessary recommendations. And please, when you are concluding, do not raise points that you did not raise when you were recommending. Do you get? Or do not raise new points. Are we together?
Yeah.
So do not raise new points that you did not raise during the course of as analyzing the case. So conclude, and that's all. Now let's move on. Okay, I've spoken about criticizing. Now define. Define actually means you are giving meaning to a question. Please note that define. So I've seen several cases that students you'll be told to define and you start writing the importance of the concept, the this and that. When the examiner tells you to define, when the examiner tells you to define, are we together?
Yeah.
Are we there?
Yes.
Okay. So when the examiner tells you to define, you have to restrict it to defining. You don't have to, you are not trying to impress anyone here. Follow what the examiner tells you to do. So define and move on. Like here they said, define budgeting in public sector accounting and finance. Define it and move on. Don't start
Okay, before
writing.
you go on, I want to
Yes, sir.
point out like the question two say define the constitution and mention its type, which means
Types.
two questions are lumped into two into one
Exactly.
here. So you have to define it first, and then you go ahead and mention the
Mention
types.
the types.
Now, if
Exactly.
this is a 1 mark question, there's no point writing full page. But
Exactly.
if this is a 10 mark question, then you must not write only one sentence or 3 lines. You must write, if possible, one full page. So you must take note that the mark that is assigned to that question makes you know how much more information you must provide. Please take note
Exactly.
of that. Okay,
Exactly.
over to you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, sir. And another thing is describe. Now, when you hear describe, describe is more detailed than define. Now, what most people do is whenever they are told to define, they used to describe. Meanwhile, they don't know. If you are told to define, and once you are done defining and you are still talking about importance, qualities, or maybe features, then you are already moving to describe. If the examiner has not told you to describe, do not describe, because this describe actually is more broader than define. When the examiner tells you to describe, he wants you to give a detailed account. You have to define, you have to talk about some qualities or features of that particular concept. So let's move on. Now look at this particular question here. Describe the concept of triple ES, triple E's rather, as it relates to value for money audit. the efficiency, economy, and all of that. So in the value for money audit, now in this particular scenario, you don't have to, when they tell you describe, now they've given you the grace to define value for money audit first. Do you get? Before you now talk about those triple E's. So describe is more broader than define. So let's go also to discuss. Now, discuss is also even more broader than describe and define. Now, I see discuss. I used to say whenever you see the examiner telling you to discuss a particular concept or an item, he wants you to raise valid points, valid arguments. It's more like it's offering you the chance to tell you what you understand about a particular concept. It's not narrowing it down to tell me this as regards this area. Tell me this as regards this area. It wants you to talk about literally everything that you understand about that particular area. But while at it, you have to also consider the mark that is allocated to this particular concept. Are we together?
Yes.
So you have to consider, like Mr. Tayo said, you don't have to start writing a full page for maybe a 1 mark question. It's not necessary. The examiner has told you from there, even merely looking at the mark attached to a particular requirement, you should be able to say that this is the number of time you are spending on that. I think we are still going to do that today, sir. So the time allocated, the mark that has been allocated should determine the time you should be spending on a particular question requirement. Are we together? So let's move on.
Yes, we have even done that while you were away. So I do that. I use that time to do my own presentation so that we can annex the time. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So we have evaluate here. When we talk about evaluation, for you to evaluate, there's a basis for your evaluation. Of course, the examiner will not just tell you to evaluate something as an exam requirement without having a basis to form a basis for you to evaluate. Are we together? For example, probably an accounting standard. You might be told to evaluate what a particular organization has done in terms of using that particular IPSAS. So you have to consider what is IPSAS saying with respect to what this person has done or this particular ministry has done. So you have to consider what is IPSAS saying. Then you evaluate what the person has done based on the basis of what the IPSAS is saying. So this is going to form the basis of your evidence. This is that basis that you have actually drawn your evaluation from. That is what is going to form your evidence, and you are going to use those evidence to support your evaluation. Are we together? So that is what evaluation is looking at. Now look at this question. It says, in the real world, every economy has both the private sector and the public sector. And the requirement says we should evaluate the income redistribution and economic stabilization functions of government from the perspective of developing and economy like Nigeria. Of course, we have done the public finance area. And please, let me just squeeze this in that at least you should expect a question from public finance in your examination. Don't say you were not told. At least a question should come out in your examination. So you should be ready. You should have done everything necessary for you to have done as regards public finance. So in this area now, the basis that will form your evaluation will be the functions of the government. Are we together? So you look, there's a particular function of the government that talks about income redistribution and economic stabilization of function. So you have to look at what they have actually explained in that area of the syllabus just to evaluate what their function should be in developing a economy like Nigeria. Are we together? So that's going to form as the evidence for you to support your evaluation. So let's move on quickly. Let's talk about lists. Now, talking about lists is very direct, like you all know. An examiner tells you to list. He wants you to outline several ideas or probably aspect or event or a thing or quality. So in this case, you don't have to explain. If the examiner tells you to list, do not start to explain. Do you get? So list and leave there. Like in this case now, the examiner tells us list 5 sources of revenue to a local government in Nigeria. So money from councils, money from all of that, probably mortuaries and all of that. So you can actually list it there and move on. Don't start explaining. Are we together? So don't waste your time on things that are not necessary. Now explain. Explain entails making the answer clear, supporting it with enough details that are relevant, concise, and explanatory. If the examiner tells you to explain, please don't mix it up with describe define, discuss, evaluate. All of these are different to explain. The time examiner tells you to explain, he knows what he's doing. He knows the thing, the concept that he's telling you to explain on. What he just wants to see is direct words, concise points that can actually make him know that, oh, this person knows what he or she is doing. That is what explain is all about. Look at this question now. I said the answer clear, supporting it with enough details that are relevant, concise, and explanatory. In fact, they tell you to explain for 5 marks. You don't need to start writing full a whole page. Explaining, if the mark allocated to a particular requirement to explain is maybe 5 marks, you can just write within maybe 5 lines or 4 lines, and it must be straight to the point. Don't start beating around the bush. Are we together? So look at this one here. We're told to explain why the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria has ethical codes. Go straight to the point, explain and move on. Are we making any sense?
Yes.
Are we there, sir? Am I still on?
Yes. Right here. Yeah. You're still here.
Okay. Now, we are under verb is outline. Under verb is outline. It actually entails explaining the highlighted point stated. You know, we said something about lists the other time, and you can. I think I said something like you can use bullet points. You can use Roman numerals to actually list if the examiner requires you to list in the exam hall. So, but when it comes to outlining here actually means go a step further to explaining what you have listed. Are we making any sense? Look at this now. It says outline 5 circumstances that may warrant setting up a board of inquiry. So here you have to be, you have to first say, okay, this is why we are going to be one of the probably loss of fund. You can just state something like loss of fund, okay, and you explain it there that okay, you don't have to go deeper. Maybe a line or two is okay for you to outline. Are we together? So let's
So it
move to
means that you have to
another.
explain that loss of fund. You have to provide more information about that, right?
Exactly,
Okay, that's
exactly,
good.
exactly. So now, recommend here says it entails giving advice. Now, most times, when an examiner tells you to recommend, the examiner cannot tell you to recommend if he has not given you a case or a scenario. Do you get? So when the examiner tells you to recommend, now you cannot recommend without understanding the case that he has put in front of you. And of course, I'm going to still look at a particular. We are still going to look at how we can crack case study questions in the examination or talking about public sector accounting and finance. So there's a rule there that's IRAC principle there. Now, when it comes to recommendation, you have analyzed the case, you have done the necessary things. What you are just going to do here is to give advice on what you have analyzed in the case. Look at this question here. It says, recommend how external borrowing can bail out the Nigerian economy from the economic recession. This is not the place to start telling them, oh, Nigeria is suffering economic recession, Nigeria is doing all of this. Those are points that will not earn you marks. What they want you to do here is just to advise them that, okay, these are the steps they should take. Should they privatize this? Should they do this? Should they increase the number of exports that they are making in a year? You know, all of that, just to grow the GDP and all of that. That is what they want to hear. You are just to recommend. And here, when you are recommending, ensure that you are doing it in a chronological manner. Don't just start writing. If you can even put a little preamble that okay, these are the various points that can help Nigeria, or that can bail out Nigeria from its current economic recession. Then you put probably a semicolon, a colon. Then you move dash. You can tell them that okay, in the first point, this is it. Ensure that you are working in an orderly way. You know, these are things that I've over the years I've been able to talk to people that mark and have experience in marking ICAN examiners, and you know, whenever they open a student script and they see the way it's arranged, the manner in which answering of the points, you might be making sense, but the way in which you have arranged it in your answer booklets might not make the examiner interested in reading further. I can actually discourage. So when you are recommending, ensure it is in a chronological manner. So let's move on. Now this one says state. When you see a requirement that tells you to state, states at times can actually mean lists, but state is more, let me say, is more tasking than listing. Listing is just put what that point is and leave. But when you hear states, states can even be more than putting the points down. You can actually, a state can, if they tell you to state, you can state maybe 2, 3 lines or even a line. Do you get? Just ensure that that point that you are stating is not a phrase. It actually makes sentence. It's making a sentence on its own. But if they tell you to list, a listing requirement might not actually make sense. If you are looking at it, can actually be a phrase. Like for example, if they tell you to list the various sources of revenue to local government. Imagine just writing task. Writing tax. Tax is not a sentence on its own. But when you hear state has to be a sentence on its own. You are stating a particular point. So here it says state any 3 ways. Am I still on, sir? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are on. Yeah.
Okay. State any 3 ways by which public debt can constitute burden to the nation. So here you have to state that, okay, these are the various ways in which you feel public debt can constitute burden to the nation. You see, over the years, you hear students shouting, oh, I prepared for this exam, I did this, I did that, or probably AVP, like people usually say, Association of Village People. I don't believe that there's anything like, in as much as it could be, I don't know. But if you prepare in the right way and you pay cognizance to all of these little things, I call them little things that students don't usually take cognizance of. They don't pay attention to it. And you see someone saying, oh, it comes out of the exam, or I say, oh, I'm not sure of what I wrote. I just did the minimum, the barest minimum in the exam. Probably they told you to do this. You can't really remember what you did there. But you follow the requirement and you see the result is out and some student actually makes the paper. You'll be like, oh, it is God. It is God, yes, but at the same time, you have done the right thing. Are we together? So that is just all what
I agree with you. There are some students that come out of the exam hall and say, I don't know how I passed.
Yes.
But
exactly.
it's
because they've actually followed this.
Apply all this technique.
Exactly.
Went out. There are other people that came out and say, I don't know why I failed. I did everything.
Yes.
They missed out the techniques here. Yeah, you are right.
That's just so summarize here usually mean you are bringing a conclusion to all what you have done. It's usually common in case study questions. And please, when you are told to summarize, the examiner might require you to summarize all what you have done in analyzing the case. In your summary, don't introduce new points that you did not talk about when you are analyzing the case. Because of the examiner will just be looking at, okay, where is this point coming from? You did not tell me about this earlier on. How come it's in your summary? So when you are summarizing, you have to be brief. Don't start to talk jargons or using ambiguous words. You have to use, and whenever you are summarizing, please, especially those of us that don't know how to answer case study questions yet. Please, whenever you are answering case study questions, always know that avoid using first person pronouns. It could actually be detrimental to you. It's not good to use first person pronoun like I, personalizing the case. It's not always nice. So please pay attention to that. I just remembered that now. So it is good for you to pay attention to that. So when you are summarizing, ensure that you are concise, you are brief. Don't avoid unnecessary details. It's actually good for you to note that. Now, let's go to the next slide. I spoke about us cracking case study questions in public sector accounting and finance. Of course, there's a question that is 30 marks. And this question usually used to be lengthy. Students are usually scared of those lengthy questions. And let me tell you one cheat code that you don't know. Those lengthy questions at times used to be the simplest. But because of you have seen the examiner painting a very long scenario or probably a long case, you're already discouraged that, oh, what's this person writing? The best thing to do here is to pay attention to all what we are going to be talking about, cracking case study in the case study questions in public sector accounting and finance. Now, I will introduce you to a principle called the IRAC principle. It's an acronym that depicts identification, that's I, R stands for rules, A stands for analysis, then C for conclusion. Now, due to our time, I have a question here for us to analyze, but due to our time, I would not be able to analyze this question, but I will talk generally so that when next you meet not only this question in the exam, or you can actually apply this principle to it. So I don't want to narrow it down to this question. I want to give us something that can work for all case study questions. Now, let's move to the identification area. Now, you go through the question, like Mr. Tayo must have told you, when you see the case, neglect that case. First, go to the requirements. When you get to that requirement, you will know where you are heading towards when you are reading the case. Immediately you know what is the examiner wants you to do. In fact, when you go back to reading the case, you are reading it with more focus. You are reading it with more direction because of at that point you start taking down. In fact, I've heard students that have done it in the exam hall just with a pencil. Please don't use biro on your question booklet because of the examiner can actually term it as an examination malpractice, and you don't want to be penalized. Trust me. So please, you can just take a pencil to the example so you can erase it so it doesn't put any dent on your paper. So when you have known the requirements, you go to the case. When you are reading through the case, anything that you feel is very important for you to answer that case study question, start ticking it down. In fact, underline it so that when you are done reading the case and you understand the case very well, you don't have to start looking for that important point. Are we together? Before you can answer the case. Because once you have actually outlined that point, you can easily remember it when you want to answer the case. So now let's look at the identification here. Now, identification here means immediately you are reading the case, your brain should be going down to where this is in the syllabus. You have to understand that where is this case coming from in the syllabus. That is the identification. Identify that area of the syllabus is being examined. It's just like when you want to search for a file on your system. You press F, probably you are looking for a file you named finance. You press F, the system brings all the things under F. Do you get? So you press I again. You discover that within maybe few words, maybe you have imputed few letters, it brings you the accurate thing that you are looking for. That is just the process of identification. You are trying to identify the area from which the case is being tested from. So once you have identified it, then you can actually know what that particular area is spoken about. Imagine a question is being tested under IPSAS 13, easy. You can easily go down to it and say, or IPSAS 2, talking about cash flow statement. So you can easily know that, okay, this is what it is talking about. So once you have known that this question is talking about cash flow statement, you move straight down. Your brain starts to think. That, okay, what are the rules that are guiding this particular area? So you have to establish those rules. Once you have established those rules that will make you analyze the case, then you have established the facts. You will know what you are doing from there. In fact, when you are reading it and you are immediately remembering those rules, those facts, those principles that will make you analyze the case, you can be jotting it down with a pencil. Do you get? So you can clean it off. So which will now move you to analyzing the case. Don't forget that it is the rules that you have identified here that will make you analyze this case. So you are expected to analyze the case study on some facts and principles that are similar to the area of the scenario. Please always remember to lay emphasis on established facts and principles. Don't forget that this analysis wouldn't have been done if the rules were not in place. So those principles, those rules that you have identified that, okay, this is what recognition criteria is saying in IPSAS 2 and all of that, that is what you are making reference to in your analysis. So you have to use those rules that you have established in the area to go and analyze the case. And once you are done analyzing, what next for you is conclusion. Now, this conclusion goes two ways. Once you are concluding, you have to include a summary of what you have been talking about and also recommend. If you do not recommend, you have not done anything. Don't wait for the examiner to provide answers, provide advices to what you have spoken about in your analysis, because it is incomplete if you have not. It seems you want to squeeze something in, sir.
No, go ahead. You froze for a few seconds, so I was trying to give you that feedback.
Okay, sir. So
we have just
that
few
is
minutes now.
So I think I'm done with that area. So we can move on. I think we have
So let's
gone
have
through
your
this part.
feedback. Please give your feedback here, your
Okay.
question, your reaction in the comment section, just so we can be sure we're not just the two of us talking to each other.
Exactly.
Give us your feedback. John, say fantastic, thanks. Isaac, say wow, I'm learning. Thank you very much. Odua, say you are making me know all my little mistakes. This is an eye opener. Thank you very much, Odua. Adelarin, thank you, sir. All right, Adelarin, thanks so much for that feedback. Continue, David. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yes, sir. So let's move to, since you have treated the time management area, let's move to how we can actually maximize marks. So
Yes, just to wrap
you're
up,
actually
just to put some tips on the time management. Remember that
okay, sir.
you have 180 minutes for a 3 hour exam. 180 minutes.
Yes,
That means, therefore, if you divide that by 100 marks, that means you should spend 1 minute, 1.8 minutes per
exactly.
question. So what? How do you find out zero point 0.8 minutes? So zero point 0.8 minutes times 60. That is 1 minute 48 seconds for every question. You must not spend more than 1 minute 48 seconds. Abbreviating that, you must not spend more than 18 minutes for every 10-mark question. The one that says 40 mark, you divide that 18 minutes by 4. You must not spend more than 72 minutes, which means 1 hour 12 minutes in case study for question 1. The maximum you must spend for case study question 1, which is a 40-mark question, is 1 hour 12 minutes. That is 72 minutes. So, okay, go ahead, David.
Okay, sir. So talking about the maximizing of marks. So looking at the multiple choice question, section A, for those that actually treat multiple choice questions, you have to answer the question without looking at the options. You have to eliminate the incorrect options, answer all the questions, read the questions carefully, very important, and make sure you understand what the question is asking. So ensure that you follow all the instructions for the exam. And looking at the section B aspects, that's the theory questions, always make sure you read the exam instructions carefully. We've been talking about this, and I think I would want to actually chip in a particular experience that I had when I was in my professional level. I was writing case study for the second time then, and it's a norm for us to, whenever we enter the exam hall, we know the paper for case study, how it looks like. So probably I didn't read the instruction on the question paper, which stated that um, everybody writing case study examination, the answer booklet that they should be using should be boldly, case study should be boldly written on it. Meanwhile, they gave me the normal one that all professional students use. So I didn't know, and I was not the only one. Well, and most of us that were actually affected by that were those that were actually coming in newly for that paper. Like we have not written some exams with them previously. So we just came in to write only that paper on that particular day. So we didn't know the instruction before. We did not even bother to ask. We did not read. So 3 hours into the exam, imagine an exam of a particular exam of 4 hours 15 minutes, and it was already 3 hours gone. So the examiner was just walking past, and he was like, or the invigilator was walking past, and was like, "You are not using the prescribed answer booklet." It was all hell loosed on me. Imagine doing, I'd already done on my appendix and all of that. But thanks to the invigilator, he gave us time. He told us to stop wherever we are, and he gave us a new answer booklet that we should just calculate the number of space that will take us to actually rewrite all what we have done in the previous answer booklet into the new one. Then after the exam, he gave us like 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1. Imagine writing all what you have done in 3 hours into the new answer booklet just in 45 minutes or 1 hour. Are you there, sir? so
Yes, hearing you.
we are quite lucky that diet, and I'm quite happy that I actually passed that diet. But imagine in a situation where you didn't have an invigilator that is not quite lenient, that would have done that. So you know what it means. So that's why it is always good. Some of us are even taking reference courses. Ask them on the day that you are writing your examination that what are the instructions that they have passed. Don't forget that you have not been writing the exam right from when they started. You are just coming to take only that course. So ask. Let them be sure of rules that have changed. ICAN tends to change the way the mode of they run things from diet to diet and all. So don't assume that what they used last diet is what they'll be using this diet. So ask questions, read instructions. So, and another thing is, be as brief as possible while stating the main points. Write down, I've spoken about this earlier, write down answers legibly and neatly. You see, this one is very important. I can't even lie to you. It's very important because as an examiner, when they pick up the script, if you have a very good writing and you are legible, it interests them to even mark your script. But if they can hardly see what you are writing. It's it's something that I can't really. So choose questions carefully, questions that you know that you can exercise enough competitive advantage on, that can make you earn more marks on. So that's the
Yeah.
answers that you should actually go for. So please don't say because of, oh, this was the question that the area that they taught us from in our last class of the diet. So that's why I'm answering this question. Nobody will say, okay, all questions have equal marks. So
Yeah.
so just know that anyone that you know that you can answer correctly. And what are the comments that we have provided here? Ensure that candidates are advised to reach the Starry Gold Studies solution pack. Candidate major pitfall was their shallow understanding of the subject matter topics, and candidates are advised to reach the topic more deeply when preparing for future examinations. Candidates are advised to answer case study questions in a more structured approach. We've spoken about that. And lastly, Starry Gold study solution contains relevant case studies and solutions. Even the past questions is right there for us. So you can actually consider that also. So
Yeah,
we are
that
moving
is the
on.
Style video has all of that. So it
Yes,
has
sir.
all the past questions
All the
from
past
2014
questions.
up till date. So
Yes, sir.
the more past question you practice, the more you move, you get similar. The more you familiarize yourself with the exam. And somebody said, if the first time you are seeing a question is in the exam hall, you are more likely to fail that question. So that means that you should have practiced as much past question as possible. And
Sure.
there's no other place you can get that other than the since 2014 past question we have been solving in our video lecture up till date. So if you don't have it, it's a good place to start. Okay, go ahead, David.
Okay, so I think this is a proper exam type question, and maybe due to our time,
Yeah,
it's
we
still more
won't be
like
able
just
to
to
go
back up.
through it.
We won't
Yes,
be able to go through it. So, but
our time is
we
really
have
up.
explained most of the things that we are still going to be doing here. So it doesn't really matter here because of we have
Yes,
explained
so I'll be
literally
sharing.
everything.
I'll be sharing my screen. You can stop
Okay, sir.
sharing, David. Thanks so much
Okay,
for that.
thank you, sir.
I'll be
Yes, sir.
sharing my own screen now. So let me know once you have stopped sharing. Good. Welcome back,
Okay.
everyone.
Uh,
I'm happy to see you. Thank you, David, for that proper explanation you have made. So please let me know if you
no,
can see my screen, David.
I can see your screen, sir.
Okay, so how to maximize mark? We've already spoken about that before when David was off. And yeah, if you are just joining us, make sure you watch the replay of this so that we won't repeat everything. So having said that, I bring you to what resources should you use. One of these problems that students also have is that when they want to prepare for case study, they go and get all the pack that they have. I am not here with the ICAN pack. The ICAN pack is like, I think, up to 1,000 pages, if I'm not mistaken. So you get that one. Then you go and buy all the authors that have written on case study. You go and pack their books and put there. You carry all the lecture centers, all their notes, you heap it there. You also go and carry all the pathfinders, you heap it there. By the time you want to start studying, your heart will start beating fast. And you start wondering, where do I start from? So that is also a poor study strategy. So what you should do, like, why did we move into video lectures? Let me give us a short story. In 2000 and up to 2010, we used to run physical classes, right? And we realized that when the stock market crash, banks were laying off staff, and company were laying off staff, and all of that. So that means that the few staff that were available in the office were doing more than they were doing before. Imagine a place that have 10 people in the account department. Now there are only three. It's not that the work there reduces. It's just that the three people will be doing 10 people's work. That means you work on Saturday, work on Sunday, and all of that. So we see that people started failing the exam, not because they were not intelligent, not because they were not prepared, but because they didn't have the time to come for classes. Some of them have to travel and so on and so forth. So that's when we introduce our video lecture. But an interesting outcome happened that time. We observed that those who got the video lecture were passing the exam easily than those who were coming for physical classes. So we started finding out why. That's when we get to know that fatigue, you can't finish work by 6 o'clock, sometimes 8, sometimes 10, Monday to Friday, and then Saturday you are going for lecture again. You'll be stressed out. And remember that your lecture will start in the morning till night. I'm not saying physical lecture is not good. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm telling you about the survey and analysis we did. So we found out that
Exactly.
those who got the video lecture in their own at their own time in the office, maybe during break time, they bring it out. They do 1 hour. Maybe when they close, if you are in a place like Lagos or Port Harcourt or Abuja where there are traffic, right, or Kano, right, you find out that after close hour, when you leave Lagos, when you leave your office by 5, you won't get home until maybe 7 or 8 or even 9 o'clock sometime. So, however, if you wait till around 7 or 8 or 9, you find out that the journey that will take you 3 hours might take you 45 minutes or can take you 1 hour. Those of us that stay in Lagos can relate with this. So we find out that as a student begin to use the video, either once they close in the office, they go study the video, or while they are in traffic, they go study the video. They either get the Android version or the tablet version or put it on their system. Then they started passing. Then an interesting fact also came out. We realized that some students started telling us that when they are in the exam hall, they hear the lecturer reading the answer to them. So
Mm.
why this might sound as if it's a spiritual thing? No, there's a science behind it. You see, when you sit down, you are listening to a music over and over and over, even when you don't like that music. After a while, that music will start playing back in your mind. I don't know, it's a common experience we have. Even if it is a bad music you don't like, you will find out that the thing is just playing the melody. So when you listen to the video lecture at least 2 times, when you are in the exam or when you see similar question, the same thing you'll be hearing the voice of the lecturer, like reading the answer to you. What happened is that when you are going through the video lecture, all you have been going through will go into your subconscious mind. When you are in the exam hall and you read the question will pull them out of you. And it will appear as if you are hearing the lecturer's voice making the explanation.
Mm.
That's why you should use video lecture. So even if you are going for physical classes, augment it with video lecture. So to get our video lecture, the ICAN video lecture plus more than 12 diet ICAN pass question, then those are call the number on the screen, send a WhatsApp, send a text message. If you call and nobody is speaking, then send a WhatsApp. We will definitely respond, depending on the time you are calling. So if you are calling at midnight, obviously our team would have slept by that time. So this ICANN video lecture covers the entire syllabus. The entire syllabus. Not only that, it also covers 12 diet past questions. 12 diets. Not only that, we pick the ICAN pack and isolate all the questions in the ICAN pack and solve the solution and provide the solution. So it also covers the question in the ICAN pack. So that's not all. When you get this video lecture, you'll be entitled to join our free Telegram classes where our lecturer will be giving you weekly guideline and lectures and studies and tips and all of that. That's not all. You also get ICANN exam study guide. The study guide and what we call the blueprint that helps you cover the entire syllabus within 30 days. So the number is on your screen. Make sure you call them and get your copy. So we have put all of this together so that we can bring you the tips and everything that you need to pass this exam. So before I go, I still want to demonstrate something to us regarding the exam. So remember that the exam is a 100-mark question. Session A is compulsory. Like David said, remember to always read the instruction. This place say you are required to answer 4 out of 6 but question in this paper. But it tells you in session A that session A is compulsory. So you may not pass this exam if you don't do it, unless you are exceptionally because you'll be throwing away 40 marks. So even if you answer the other 5, then you may still fail because you are throwing away 40. Then, like I told us, don't do more than 4 that the examiner asks you to do. If you answer all the 6, the examiner will pick the best 2 and strike them out. They will keep session A for you, question 1 for you because it's compulsory. But they will pick the best 2 from the other 5 paper and strike it out. Since you answer all and you allow the examiner to choose for you, don't make that mistake. So if you have your question, leave it in the comment box so that we can look at it, or give us your reaction. Tell us your feeling about this webinar. Tell us what's your feedback, your reaction or feedback or whatever before we bring it to a close. So, David, I want to thank you very much for the fantastic work.
Thank you for having me,
so
sir.
please let's give him a clap of a hand of chat box for the wonderful job he did. So let's put some emoji there.
Even though the network too was trying to be funny.
One of those things, it's part of technology. Nothing is perfect yet. Nothing is perfect yet. So,
exactly.
But at least we were still able to
gain
make
something.
it. So before I go, I will now stop sharing my screen so that I will now give a final explanation to this issue that I want to talk about. Remember that when I was sharing my screen earlier on, I did spoke about how you should label your answer sheet. Okay, let me do that again just to for those where you will still meet it there, but let me just quickly show us what I did here. All right, David, please tell me if you are seeing my screen.
I can see your screen, sir.
Beautiful. So here you see that, like I said earlier on, you don't have to start with question 1. If it is question 3 that you want to start with, make sure you label your paper properly. You can see here, I put here 3A. So 3A, because some of the questions have children and grandchildren, right? And so the parent question is this one. So you put there 3A, and then you go to the next page, put 3A continue. Like I said, I've already explained that earlier. Then the next one will be 3B, then 3B continue, 3C, 3C continue, 3D continue, because it might be 3D that you want to actually answer first. So you come and do that if that is the easiest you can start with. Now, having explained that, I will go to, this is 5A, 5A continue. See the way I've labeled all my pages so that I will not mix anything up. Now, let me now come to 4. Let me say maybe it's number 4 I want to start. I now put 4A, 4A continue. Now, as I keep going, make sure that there is no space in between your answers. When I mean no space, for instance, this is 4D and 4D continue. Now, don't leave a space here and then come here and start 5 or number 6 or number 1. That will, for instance, now, number 1 here. So if number 1 is what I want to do last, see now there's a space here. So if the examiner are marking your script, they might get here and think that this is the end. So if you have left too much space before, just put a writing here and say continue next page. So make sure you write on the page. Don't leave it blank. And if there are more blank pages, write there, continue next page, so that the examiner will not assume that that is where your answers are stopped. So having said that, this is the very last I'm adding to this. I'll stop sharing my screen so that we can see what I want to show us here. All right. Yeah, I think we can both see each other now. So this is 4A, for instance, I was making illustration on. Yeah, David, can you see 4A?
Yes, sir, I can see it, sir.
So this is how the exam sheet looks like, right? This is how it looks like.
Sir.
They are usually loose sheets. They are usually loose sheets with perforation somewhere around it. You can see perforation.
Yes, sir.
So this is 4A for the purpose of the exam. This is 4A continue, right? Right?
Exactly.
You can see that. So this is 4B. Now, if I write 4A and my sheet is full here for 4A and 4A continue, remember that the third one will now be 4B. So I can ask for
Yes.
extra sheet so that I can continue 4A and then attach it later.
Mm.
So that's the part I want to explain so that you don't have to model things up. Make sure that you
Uh,
reference
and
properly.
also an
All right.
addition here. For those of us that probably you might want to collect extra booklets, always remember to fasten it to the booklet that you used initially. It's very important. So you, in the process of transmitting your script, it doesn't get lost. So that could actually be something useful for us also.
Yes, that extra booklet usually is extra sheet. If my memory
Yes,
doesn't fail me, then make sure you insert it into the
exactly.
appropriate question that you are solving. Don't put your extra booklet at the end because the examiner might not know that you are continuing
Yes,
somewhere else. I hope that is clear. All
yes,
right.
sir.
So let's go and see the comments that people are putting there before we go. So let me see if you have any comments. Okay, Shen say yes, we can see it. Bakari, thanks so much for this webinar. It's truly eye opener. Thank you, Amina. Thank you, Aminat, very much. Odua, thank you so much for this. It was really educative. Thank you, Odua. All right, so others will be allowing you to leave your comments while we bring the webinar to a close. Thank you, everyone, and God bless you. Have a nice day. Bye.